Per usual, everything on this channel is for educational purposes and is not intended as financial advice. So your eyes don't deceive you here, even though it is Altcoin Wednesday. This is a graphical chart of the QQQ, otherwise known as the NASDAQ ETF, approaching what to me looks like an all-time high close today. Now, for many months at this point, many people have been discussing this cup and handle. Meanwhile, the bears have been doubling down, it seems, on their bearishness, saying that we've been ranging for 2 years. I guess just completely oblivious to things such as this. In any event, it is hard for crypto to stay bearish with legacy absolutely roofing. I also think it's very bullish for legacy that the bears are continuing to stay bearish. As of last week, everyone's still in denial. The chart is the chart. Do you want to be right or do you want to make money? The data can say one thing, the markets can do completely opposite of that. Until there's evidence of weakness here, you can say there's a bear div on the daily RSI. You can say XYZ inflation data in pending next month. I agree with all that, okay? But the market says higher. So what that means for the altcoin market, as we're already seeing, that also means higher. Now, one of the reasons we mooned or roofed today, the main reason, Jay Powell at his press conference came out and said, no more hikes, look for 3 more cuts potentially next year. That was the gist of it. So Jay the Hawk became Jay the Dove today. And we can also look at data like this that says, BTC is not really correlated with NASDAQ. Look, I get it. I'm not going to disagree with the numbers, but that's not how the market feels, right? VIX is extremely low. The market feels like it's ready for risk on outside of the ETF stuff. So that's all the more reason to, at least in the moment, make hay while the sun is shining. And I was kind of having this discussion in the Discord about which timeframes to watch for the cloud. And it's not always going to be the same. When things slow down, you have to slow down, right? In the first half of the year, the daily cloud was great because the markets were super slow. When the markets speed up, the daily cloud is still useful. The daily cloud still gives you important levels to watch, but it may not give you the best entries and exits. So you do have to zoom in a little bit on the telescope or the microscope to maybe fine tune what you want to see based on the speed of the market. And for me, I can do that by looking at the 4-hour, the 8-hour, the 12-hour. Ideally, what you want to see is a KUJI bounce on any pullback. So to me, this is a little noisy because it's going in and out of the cloud, above and below the cloud. Not that this isn't wrong or the signals aren't correct. It's just I know how to read this better. I know that KUJI bounces tell me to buy. I know that holding above the cloud is bullish. And even recently, we're back above the KUJI here. So going forward on anything that has this speed or tempo to it, if you're bullish, you want to see us hold above the cloud. If you're bearish, you want to see a move below the cloud, below the 8-hour cloud. On some of these charts, if you're waiting for an entry, what you want to see is a TK cross recross or price dipping into the cloud and then ripping back above the cloud, kind of what we're getting now on the 4-hour BTC. So yes, the daily still says 36 is the level. Once we decide to retrace, this will remain the level pretty much indefinitely here until the very end when the KUJI catches up with the Tenkin. So this may be a gigantic M double top over time. It may be a gigantic head and shoulders. Right? We don't know what this is going to exactly look like. Maybe this goes to 48. But for the moment, 36 is still the level should we decide to retrace. I also remain in the camp that we are unlikely to exceed 48 because we've never exceeded the 618 fib in a pre-halving year in a similar situation. So until we actually do, it's hard for me to say, yes, this time is different. So I think positioning around that for me makes a lot of sense. For other people, they're not going to care. That's fine. It'll be easier if we get some sort of pattern or warning candle or something into the 48.50 level to let go. Right now, you're not really seeing much of anything as far as a warning sign. Yes, we're at the other end of the cloud. Yes, we typically don't go much further, but nothing to me is screaming bearishness just yet, other than historic precedents being very close to where we've seen in previous levels, right? Between 42 and 48 is the level. So even if you don't trade Bitcoin, again, it's important to have an opinion because alts can party on, Garth, as long as BTC hangs on in that 40 K range and doesn't get too angry, alts are more likely to have a good time. Looking at dominance and comparing previous Bitcoin halvings also tells you all you need to know as far as what to expect leading into halving versus post-halving. Post-halving is typically when we've seen alts do best, which is crazy to think because many alts currently are doing outstanding. The lower time frame dominance still projects higher. I still like higher on trend. All this looks completely intact. This chart may actually be it's different this time chart if the fund flows for BTC are so dominant that they just absorb everything around them. That's completely possible. But again, it's hard to say that until it actually happens, until we actually see those flows, until we get those numbers. Even with strong flows in existing institutional products, there are some alts that are still doing well, right? Despite all that. So it's not like Bitcoin's this runaway freight train on its own here, even when dominance is saying Bitcoin's the place to be. Bitcoin's the place to be broadly. We can look at this chart, the alt BTC index, if you will, total 2 minus stables divided by Bitcoin. This has held the diagonal downtrend for over a year. Below the weekly cloud, most alt BTC pairs will look like this. The ones people are talking about won't look like this because they've moved, but broadly, this is kind of inverse dominance, right? So on balance, alt's not quite the place to be just yet, unless you pick and choose the select few that are doing well. As far as total 3 minus stables, this chart with the cloud looks excellent. At this point, I think you have to say to yourself, what's my downside? And I think you are patient beyond Bitcoin halving. So whatever I'm buying now, I plan to hold until December 2025 minimum. I'm going to hold it the entire year, okay? Because I know, again, alts typically do best post Bitcoin halving. This already looks bullish for alts. Your downside is probably the midpoint of the previous range based on the cloud, right? And if you're like me and want to be super patient and willing to be super patient and wait for those lows versus rotating in now, I think you will be rewarded on some of these charts. I just can't see buying certain things like ADA or AVAX all the way up here. I just can't. So I'd much rather wait. That isn't to say they have to retrace, but I do think you need to give alts some time here broadly if you are rotating into them already. So starting with ETH, one other thing, stablecoin prints, Tether, it's kind of leveled off here, but it's at all-time highs, right? We haven't seen any more injections into the ecosystem. We have seen more Tether prints. So we do already have some Tether ready to go in the engine, but that hasn't been released. It's like issued but not authorized, as they call it, right? And once that does get released, you'll see it in the circulating supply. ETH, probably the laggiest of the laggards. The only thing worse than this would be a bearish USD chart. This is kind of like, a false sense of security that eventually this will be bullish. The problem is the opportunity cost here and timing this correctly. I've continued to buy more ETH on spot myself. So I'm right there with most people here that, you're losing out, going down the risk curve, going past mid caps, going past low caps, going in, dumpster diving, trash panda, raccoon stuff, which has done really well. I do think ETH will do well eventually, but is ETH going to remain in this weekly cloud until after Bitcoin's halving? Very well might. Not much volume going on here. So definitely one to be patient with. ETH BTC continues to look angry. Another day, another ETH BTC low. This looks like it's headed for multi-month lows. This looks like it's going to go lower. I'm kind of hedging myself by buying a little bit on spot. Not much, but this chart does not look happy. Does not look like it's ready to reverse. It looks like we will get a bull div potentially on a lower low here. But come January, come product launch for the Bitcoin ETFs, you just have to be careful because this thing might just get blown out to the bottom side. I would never trade this pair directly. I think it's way too hard to trade. I think it's way too noisy. But general trend here remains bearish. Solana 8-hour cloud. Lots of cup and handle vibes across the board on everything. Legacy, crypto, alts. This would probably qualify as a cup and handle. Claude still likes it on the 8-hour. Maybe this is how Solana gets to 100 by the end of the year. And I'll just say the amount of podcasts I've seen about Solana when Solana was sub $20 was about 0. And now I'm seeing about 50,000 podcasts about Solana. So it's interesting. We're not seeing much about ETH, at least I'm not on the media side. Funny how that works with price. So this chart looks like it's regaining strength, ready for bullish continuation. ADA continues to move up. 71-ish is the yearly pivot. It's in the weekly cloud. Again, I think you're just patient with this. If you have conviction for 169, what are you in a rush for, right? There are going to be 20, 30% down weeks. That's part of the game. You know, that's part of the volatility here. Upside risk, downside risk. Anywhere below 50 cents, I think, is a very decent re-entry. But, you know, I wouldn't get worried if this thing retraces heavily. I would just wait it out. Again, look at previous halvings. This is 2020. This thing didn't really start moving until like 6 months after halving. Okay, so it's super, super early, but it does continue to look good on the cloud. This is AVAX 8 hour. Another thing you can do if you don't believe in the cloud is you can turn on the alligator fractal stuff. And if we look at the fractals, we had this up move into the 20s, low 20s. Then we started to break down from the support fractals a little bit. That should have been your stop loss signal. And then later on towards the beginning of December, you can see that diagonal line here. We started to break above the resistance fractal. So that was your game on entry signal. This may look better on the 4-hour cloud. It's a little loose on the 8-hour cloud, right? We're above everything. The signals aren't great as far as entry exit. So you definitely have to dial this in a little bit, but 8-hour alligator fractal, you know, the MA's got noisy here, told you to be careful. And then they straightened out again, bullish. And ever since then, it's just been rip roaring 2x since like 10 days ago. Wild. Stop loss in this would be 35 based on the fractals. But if you get another fractal that's a higher high, above the higher high, then that's another entry. So this continues to look great. Dot on the 8-hour, very much the same story. This actually looks better on the cloud. You're getting, you can't really see it because there's a bunch of noise here, but you're getting a TK cross recross effectively on the 8-hour. You're getting the support fractals to tell you to take profit based on a trailing stop loss principles. You're telling, the resistance fractals are telling you to get back in this trade at around 535, something like that. Also on your side was a Kumo breakout plus a TK cross, right? So there's a bunch of stuff at that level that's saying now is a good chance to get back in. Currently, it looks like it's ready to break those resistance fractals again. Stop loss around 670. You can see another sort of pennant flag thing forming here. So it certainly looks like it wants more. Link, on the other hand, very much the opposite, right? Below those moving averages in the cloud. So until this stuff strains itself out again, this one would just be an ignore for me. Likely back above 16. Again, I don't buy weakness. I buy strength. I know some people do the opposite, and that's totally fine. That's just for me. I prefer to wait for the strength than to fool around trying to pick a bottom here. Still looks okay overall. MATIC back above the 8-hour looks okay. Again, you're kind of seeing this diagonal fractal. You're kind of seeing cup and handle on a lot of stuff. Collectively, it feels like the USD pairs certainly want to move higher. This is Atom, kind of already started to move higher. Looks a little late at this point, but again, trend is definitely favorable for bullish continuation. Here's one nobody asked me about, but we've been talking about this for the past week. Now, like most things in altcoin land, ETC shouldn't exist. So just pretend I agree on that point, because I do. And the technicals, though, look great. Okay, this is the exact thing. I want to see pain, devastation, radiation, half-life, right? I want to see all of it just playing out completely sideways, forgotten. No one is talking about this, okay? Nobody. Maybe people in South Korea because they trade ETC, but this is my version of being the trash panda, okay? I'm sifting through this week's smelly fish, rotten meat, all that stuff. This is my version. This is ETC. Again, looks great on the 3-day. So I already have some of this. My alt bags are not high, okay? Usually in this stage, it's around 10,000 USD notional collectively. So don't follow me on this. I'm just saying, like, this is the type of setup that I like to see. Near, very much the same thing. Trying to get back above that 3-day cloud. Looks pretty good. Out of its bear channel, you can see kind of this Atom EV diagonal resistance at 280. Looks fine though. I think that's another one worth maybe giving a chance. RUNE on the 4-hour, which had been choppy but had been giving good signals on the 4-hour. Looks like it may try to recapture the 4-hour cloud, which would be a continuation signal. Not something I touch, but always interesting to monitor the leaders versus the laggards. This one definitely led with Solana. Even before November, this thing was starting to take off. So definitely something to just monitor. Lido or any ETH associated L2 or token that's been around for a couple of years probably looks something like this, in that it's kind of a version of ETH spot. It's just an ascending triangle. Until ETH starts to take off, I wouldn't expect this to do anything. It's still ranging. It's coiling. It looks like it has a bullish bias, but you're going to be waiting probably another couple months for this to eventually play out. So I think there's better pairs to trade, and maybe you come back and monitor this, set some alerts at the diagonal and the horizontal, and just forget about it for now, but it looks fine. FTM ranging $1 would be kind of the common sense psychological resistance. $2 would be the 50% retracement. I know it doesn't look like that because this is on log, but that's the 50% level from high to low. And it's trying to get back above the 3-day. So I think anything that looks similar to this, similar to ETC, it's worth a consideration. And then on the complete opposite 180 is stuff like AKT, which has traded fairly like coffee in for many months now, actually. It's broken out of its consolidation period, sign of strength, cup and handle, continuation. This looks ready for all-time highs. This looks great, right? Another chart that I wouldn't even think about selling, even if it gets back down to 150. I wouldn't even think about it. This chart has had months and months of strength. I don't know what sector or what this is. I don't know if it's AI related. No idea, but chart looks great. Very likely ready for all-time highs. Nano, similar to FTM, hitting a logical horizontal resistance level, breaking out of the 3-day cloud. 319, 320 looks to be the logical next spot eventually, right? This may take a year to get to 320, but that's where it probably goes. And it looks like it wants to break out of that consolidation range. MINA, same thing. Again, all these coins are just complete garbo, right? But on the 3-day cloud, they look okay. They're not making lows. They're ready to break out of the cloud for the first time, in this case ever, on the 3-day. So sure, why not, right? Inverse finance, more like inverse wealth, but even this one eventually may break above the 3-day cloud. It's super early to expect that. So set an alert at 60 and wait, but doesn't look as bad as it did a couple months ago. KUJI, no idea what this is. I don't know. It's probably some ultra low cap, but it does look like it wants whatever all-time high that is. No idea. Use extreme caution if you're trading any of this stuff at this point. If you're still listening to this video, JUNO, also again into the 3-day cloud. For all these alts, I just don't know why you would even care what the price is today and just wait. What's the worst that could happen? Like, yeah, you're going to underperform BTC maybe, but the upside is still pretty phenomenal just based on the cycle. JITO, the airdrop. For this one, I would check to see how much of the airdrop is left to be claimed, how much they're going to be airdropping, where those tokens are being sold. See if you can get a handle on the flows here. In general, this looks better than last week. Trying to get back above a super ultra low time frame cloud. Doesn't look as angry as it did initially when the airdrop was released. And just take a quick survey, get 10 strangers on the street. Ask them if you gave them $5,000, but they had to sell it. What would they do? Right? They would probably sell it. Most people, when they get a windfall, are going to sell an airdrop. So until that selling subsides, there's going to be a natural overhead supply hang here, I think, for any upside. Cow, again, no clue. Not something I would touch. Ultra low timeframes. Just looks like it's ranging to me. Mantle on the 4-hour. Again, I like this as a gauge for tempo of this specific pair. You're getting your cloud crisscrosses, and you're about to get potentially another recross with price above the cloud. So that would be another bullish continuation sign. This one looks pretty good. On the 4-hour cloud, VRTX, no clue. Looks like just down channel, bearish. I got nothing else besides that. Prime, daily, kind of looks like KUJI. There's kind of this fractal in a lot of these charts, like, I already forgot the name. What was that other one? AKT. Like AKT, right? A lot of these maybe previous generation alts back at all-time highs for some reason. And Prime looks like that's one of them. Looks okay. Doesn't look super angry or anything to me. Then lastly, Ocean on the 3-day also looks okay. You know, it's above the 3-day cloud. What more can you ask for? Hasn't been above the 3-day cloud basically since the top, since 2021. You know, it tried that in late 2021, couldn't hold on to it. So this looks plenty fine to me. I would just let this run. I would literally forget I have it and just let it go because it doesn't matter. You are pre-halving. These do better post-halving. That's how it's always been. It's probably how it's always going to be. So let me know what you think of the alt markets right now, because right now everything's doing pretty well. We're doing pretty well. Obviously, we have to dodge a recession, but at this point, what does that even mean? I feel like we've had certain sectors of the economy in a recession already. Certainly the tech sector, certainly the shipping sector, fiscal side of the house has been propping up the economy. So that's certainly helped. So overall, we look okay. Let me know what you think. Like, dislike, comment, share, subscribe, and happy trading.